Hello everybody, thank you for joining me today. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Welcome to another Ultimate Skyrim. Oh, excuse me, hold on, give me 2 seconds. Ow! Ultimate Skyrim dev stream. Hey Atru, hey Feodic, thank you for joining me. Today we are going to be doing just some relatively chillaxed stuff. I would like to stress test the game for a little bit because I am finally, at the behest of many of you guys, I have finally downloaded New Vegas Anti-Crash. I'm really excited to pop it in and see if I can crash the game, basically. Because game crashes have still been possible. Very rare, but possible. We've experienced a couple of them even on the streams, which is not a fantastic benchmark because whenever I'm streaming, there's obviously a certain degree of strain that is being placed on the machine. However, it's important that even streaming configurations can perform optimally, of course, because a lot of people like to stream the game, and I want to accommodate for that. So I'm really excited to pop in New Vegas Anti-Crash. I'm really hoping that we can finally do away with the R6025 error, if I'm remembering that correctly. Hey BB, last Sunday I decided to install Beta 4, and you know what? It works. Great so far. I'm happy for you, Feodic. We have been working pretty hard to make even the beta builds stable. Gizmo Gill, hey, gameplay or development today? Probably a little bit of both. I'd say quote-unquote gameplay a little more than development, just because, like I said, I'm going to be jumping into the game and attempting to stress test the game in a couple different ways. So that kind of inherently is gameplay. I don't know. I generally, for these development streams, I don't like to do anything too nitty-gritty, just because I find, well, so just the simple act of modding Skyrim, and especially doing what we do here, is very detail-oriented. It's very easy to accidentally skim over things that require attention. So I have... Ooh, let's get rid of this. I use that for my last update. But some stuff we can do. Some stuff does not require super crazy attention to detail. All right. Without further ado, how you guys doing today? Anyone got any fun stuff to share about the weekend? Hopefully you had a good weekend. One technical question, if I may. What to do with files in overwrite folder made by AV Patcher and Rectificator? You really can leave it there. That's actually what I do myself. But that is only viable. Here, I'll give you an example here. Here's my overwrite, which is just fucking crazy. Check this out. There's a bunch of orphaned backups here. There are some orphaned backups for some of the other plugins. Got a million things. I really should go in here one of these days and clean it up, but mine is the dev environment. It doesn't really matter all that much. But you can see that my automatic variance ESP is there. I'm sure that some of the stuff for, here we go, like the automatic variance SkyProc patcher is all in here. If you want, you can offload some of that stuff to its own mod folder. However, it's not, I know that a lot of quote-unquote advanced modders do that in order to keep their situation a little bit more clean, also because a lot of people have multiple profiles for mod organizer, so you can do that, because really all the overwrite is a mod folder. I've talked about this in the past, but we might as well go through how this is structured, because I think it's pretty interesting, and if you understand how it works, it's easier to understand what you can do with files and stuff. Zarnal, programming or modding in this instance requires keeping a lot of stuff in your mental modal, and reading chat does not help. I completely agree with you. That is definitely my point. I've tried in past streams to really get development done to the quality that I'm happy with. And I find that most of the time I just am so distracted by chat that I have to go back over a lot of the stuff that I do. So I figure my attention is better spent really just focused on you guys and answering your questions. Really the reason I do these streams is so that I have a chance to interact with all of you in the community in a real-time sense. So it's nice to focus that way, I think. Hi Dima, how you doing? Really nice to see you. Appreciate you stopping by. Anyway, so mod organizer, for the sake of edification, functions here. I'll bring up my mod organizer folder. So mod organizer, here's your entire install. The way that mods work, you go to your mods folder, you can see that every mod is literally just a folder that contains something. Let's go use Astronaut Crossing as an example. Let's make that halfway. Astronaut Crossing, where are you? I had that installed because I was messing with some stuff with placement, as you guys know. Atru says, give us some of that sweet, sweet gameplay. Will do, Atru. Give me 2 seconds here. So you can see Astronaut Crossing, this is the folder that it contains. If you go over here in Mod Organizer, you can open an Explorer, and it will take you... Where'd that go? The same folder? Well, it took us to the same folder, but that's what it'll do, is it'll take you to the containing folder, and just show you what's in there. And so, in theory, if you wanted to, I can make a new folder. Let's call it Blinicus. So that's our new mod, Blinicus. So here's a folder here, and I'll make a new folder that says bingdongbiddle.esp. Actually, that's not going to work. That's a folder. Let me do this instead. I'll go to Better Vampire. No, how about this one? Give me someone with a plugin. Better Docs. There we go. Copy. Go down to our wonderful mod. Paste that. Oops. Copy this. Delete that. Oh, damn it. Okay, hold on. Give me a second. There you go. Here. Boom. So now we have a brand new plugin. Dima, any infos on how far you are in development? Hey, Tyler. How you doing, man? Sure. I mean, really the best info is in the development updates. Those are the most recent, and I just dropped another one last Saturday, so that'll tell you the most current state of development. I guess the long and short of it is that I'm currently working on the crafting overhaul. It's coming along really nicely, and I hope to make some major progress on that in these next 2 weeks. After the crafting, overhaul is complete, I will be combining that with just a series of major bug fixes to go into beta 5, and then once we release beta 5, that's when I'm going to go in and sweep up any kind of minor stuff while people are testing beta 5 to discover anything new. And once we have all of that collated, I can fix it, and then it's public release time. So anyway, you can see this real fast. We just created a new mod. Go refresh, and now you can see at the very bottom here, I've got a new mod called Blinicus, and you turn it on, bam, there's our plugin. So that's really all these are, is just folders. So the reason I'm showing you this, I can also go in here, I'm going to remove that. Yes, please, so now that is deleted. Overwrite, to loop back to the original question that Fiotic had, overwrite is essentially just a single folder that contains, you know, a mod. It's basically like a mod folder, and the only thing that makes it different, is that it carries across every single profile in your mod organizer. You can see it's not contained within the mods folder. It has its own folder right here, where you can see all the different stuff that's in your overwrite. So the long and short is that if you have files that are being generated by patchers, or anything that you want to compartmentalize into its own little spot, into its own mod folder, you can do that if you know what you're doing and if you understand how the mods are structured. Otherwise, it is perfectly safe to leave it in overwrite. That's what I do because I'm too lazy to organize anything. And sometimes I find that it's just simpler. The reason I didn't have users do it themselves during the first installation process is because I didn't think it was worth the time, and I try to keep things as simple as possible. But I don't know, maybe in the next version I'll have people keep to the best practices, quote unquote, and compartmentalize it as they should. Alright, so let's get New Vegas Anti-Crash installed, and then we're gonna hop in game, see what's going on. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, New Vegas Anti-Crash, this is a new anti-crashing mod created by Q'd, I guess Q. It's my cat's name, although spelled differently. It makes you crash less, which is pretty cool, I'd say. It should work for Skyrim, and I believe there's going to be a faux mod installer to ask you what you're installing it for. Let's find out here. Yes, there's a faux mod. Okay. We got a mod manager download. Is it gonna try and, okay, never mind then. Let's see here. Here's what I'm gonna do. Shit. Okay. Let me give the manual download, because this, I think it's confused and it wants to open up Nexus Mod Manager for my New Vegas installation, which is not quite what I'm going for. So what we're going to do instead is just take the download. Another fun fact. Take New Vegas. Oh, damn it. Like that there. Here we go. We can drop this download in our download folder, which should allow Mod Organizer to recognize it as an uninstalled mod. Right here. Yep. What is this telling me? Information missing. Please select query info. Nope, I don't care about that information. Sometimes it feels half the binary / DLL mods in existence are to fix 15 different kinds of crashes. It does seem that way, Sarnal. Like Meh321's fixes are largely geared towards specific crashes. I guess it just has to be that way. Uh-oh. That's odd. Plugins. nvac.dll. It's not going to hit me with a foam mod? I thought it would. Why don't we find, before we just mindlessly charge in here, using nvac with Skyrim. Oh wow, this is old, this mod. I had no idea. So I'm assuming this just works the same way. Apparently this works with Oblivion. Should I put installing? I mean, I checked the page here. Letter codes. These are this changelog. All right. Well, I guess it just is counting on the mod manager to install it, which is all right. But I want to ensure that this is installed correctly before I waste my time stress testing. And now I'm saying preview file contents, info module, well, okay, it's got a README. At the very least, we can look there. Open an Explorer, but the README is not contained in the installation. Okay. We will go, oops, I just opened Discord. That was not what I intended. Here. What the heck? Okay, we'll go to my downloads, open this up. Discord, you can go over there. README, here we go. Okay. Also works to a lesser degree. Okay, since NVSE plugin, nvac.dll just goes in your data NV plugin. So, I mean, SKSE, it installed properly, it seems. I guess that's just good to go. If anyone has experience with this plugin, then let me know. And just in case that I've installed it incorrectly, I think it's installed correctly. The fact that it automatically offloaded itself to the SKSE folder makes me feel like it knows what it's doing. But you never fucking know with any of this stuff, do you? Maybe, is there a way to tell that it's working in-game? I guess we'll just have to jump in and find out, huh? And now, let me see. Astronaut Crossing. That's, we can get rid of that. We can get rid of these. I believe everything else is good to go. All right. Sweet. Run our rectificator really fast since we've got different plugins installed. I'm going to look up some more info on exactly how this works. NVAC with Skyrim. No. Is there something like NVAC for Skyrim? New Vegas anti-crash. Can we go tools anytime past year? Install New Vegas, blah, blah, blah. Right, I don't think we're going to get any more information out of that. Where's my... Ugh, come on, rectificator. For some reason, it does that, where the first time you attempt to run it, it just fails and then stops. It might create a log file in my documents, my game, Skyrim.skse. If it created a log file, I would assume... You might be right, but usually if it's Mod Organizer, it'll create the log files in the overwrite folder instead. You can see... Here, well, I'll let that resolve. I don't think I have any in my actual documents. Let's see here. Skyrim, that's right, it's under my games. And then Skyrim logs. Yeah, there. I only got one of them in there. So chances are it would, unless it's here. Oh, no. Okay, well, here we go. We've got some logs from other mods. So maybe it will put it there. We'll check anyway. We'll leave that window open. Let the rectificator do its thing. And we are good to go. I swear to God, that coffee. This is keeping me alive. I've had a very fun, but also a very tiring past week and a half, we'll say. I mentioned the trip to Chicago that Liz and I undertook. We left last Thursday, 2 weeks ago Thursday, and didn't arrive home until Tuesday morning. So that took a decent chunk out of my work time for those 2 weeks. So I kind of had to really crank on it this last week to get everything done. And then this weekend was kind of a whirlwind. So I am happy to hopefully, after this stream, have a little bit of time to just relax. But we'll see. There's still stuff that needs doing today. That's every day. It's just how it goes. All right. Let's hit it. Let's see what happens. You know what I really want to do that I've not gotten a chance to do is play Monster Hunter World. It's just been sitting there. I haven't played it at all more than what I played on that stream like a few weeks ago. So I played about 2 hours. Maybe I'll get to play that soon. Maybe I'll do that today. I also really want to watch Attack on Titan Season 3. That's been lurking in the back of my brain. I think I might do that if I have to choose between the two. I'm really excited to watch that. But I am also caught up on the manga. So I know I have an idea of what's going to be in Season 3. And I'm excited to see it anyway. It's nice to see it fully animated. Although I will say that reading the manga, however you pronounce it, it feels like I'm watching an anime. It's so gripping. I just keep reading page after page after page. Just binge it for hours at a time. Hey Kalali, how you doing? Feodic says, by the way, I am checking Immersive World Encounters page once a week. It seems that the author, among other things, also gives voice acting for all new encounters, currently over 50 new encounters. I know we touched this topic last time, just want to let you know this mod seems to be something big for sure. Together with extended encounters, which should be compatible, you surely set up a new standard for US. Well, those are the two mods that I want very badly to work together to create all of those really unique and interesting encounters. The voice acting is always a sticking point for me, as a lot of you guys know. I hope that it's not tremendously bad, or I hope that it's tremendously good, perhaps, is the better way of looking at that. Okay, now I'm going to create a new save, just so we're right off, no chance that anything from a previous save is interfering. Kalali, took the day off work for my birthday today, so doing really well right now. Happy birthday, man. Good, you deserve the day off. Leisure time is really important. This is something that I think that it's tough to do. So I'm in my 20s. I'm in my late 20s now. I think that for a lot of people, especially for myself and for my friends, everyone who's kind of in this age range and who's doing the kind of stuff that we're doing at the moment, it's tough sometimes to find time to unwind or just kind of free time to relax. But I think that stuff is really important. Maybe it would really behoove us to start creating that time for ourselves, doing something like taking a day off, like on your birthday. Like, young one, I'm 43 today. Oh my gosh. Well, the time flies, I'm sure. That's crazy to me to think. I mean, I don't know. I try to appreciate every day that I have, but I bet I'm preaching to the choir when I say it's like every day, every year just seems to go by faster and faster. But so that kind of even cements this idea that it's very important to take some time for yourself, or maybe even to learn how to do that. Maybe it'll get easier as we get a little bit older and things start to settle a little bit. While we're still relatively young, I think we try and fit in a lot of different activities, a lot of different things like traveling if you can. And maybe that stuff will kind of taper off one day. But I do find that if I don't create that time to unwind, or if that I think over the past couple of years I've really been just full steam ahead, and it takes a toll on you after a while. And if you're not careful, if you don't even recognize the toll that it takes, which is kind of my problem, I'm not super in tune with my own moods a lot of the time. It can mess with you, you know? So at this point in my life, I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful of how I'm spending my time, how stress and, you know, intensity of workloads, things like that are subconsciously impacting me, I guess you could say. I'm just trying to build out the skills necessary to create a sustainable work-life balance, you know? And I think that's something that's really hard to do today, because there are a lot of pressures to work your absolute hardest and to, you know, produce amazing volumes and quality of work. Like here in America in particular, I think we work more than almost any other country in the whole world. And our standards of living and our happiness quotients, according to the UN, are not particularly high compared to some other developed countries. There's a lot of new a lot of new studies that are coming out showing how a slightly reduced work time can actually produce greater amounts of productivity and happiness in employees, which is interesting. You combine that with just some of the other stressors of, you know, modern life, and it can be tough. It's tough for everyone out there in one way or another. Work-life balance is extremely important, especially once you have kids. Oh, I can only imagine. This is so Liz and I, Liz is my fiance. We have a tentative plan for kids, right? And for both of us, it's like not within the next 5 years, which will put us a little bit up there. People are having kids later and later all the time, right? But there's just so much that it feels like we need to do. And even so, for me financially, there's so much that I would like to earn more than I do now, just to create a stable basis to have kids and to have things that you need in order to have kids, like savings and like a safety net, some ability to, you know, not just live paycheck to paycheck, which is definitely what I'm doing now. I don't know, but I can see it when you have those kids. It's like you want to talk about time sinks. I love kids, I really do, but my God, I mean, I have a brother who has a new baby girl. My uncle, he had my cousin years ago. And then the monetary cost of having a child as well. You want to talk about additional stressors besides just the kids themselves. Sorry, no, kids are expensive. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's a lot to consider, but we're working to get there, and I'm looking forward to that quite a lot. Let's see here. Well, I really don't want to fucking go through and get all these MCMs. How about this? We're going to do the basic ones, the ones that kind of need to be set in order to create the relatively vanilla test environment. Vanilla Ultimate Skyrim, that is. Bathing in Skyrim. Let's get rid of add dialogue to NPCs. I don't understand the purpose of that feature. Oh yeah, I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. My gosh, Kolali. So I'm betting you could really use this day off. Happy birthday again, and I'm glad that you have a chance to do that. It's very smart to make it for yourself, because God knows you have to. That's what I mean, is life just does not really take a break. I was talking with my therapist about that, how just so often now I just feel like I never get a moment to breathe. And that might be true, but you can't really count on it just coming, you know, like if you just keep working and working and working, like somehow the universe will reward you with some sort of rest time that you need. I don't really think it works like that. I think that you have to create it for yourself. Otherwise you won't get it, and you need it. So I don't know. It's if you're just going to sit there, I guess it's like with anything where you can either lament it and just, you know, woe is me about how it's not like that, or you can do what you can to create the scenario you need in order to be balanced and to be whole and to enjoy yourself and blah, blah, blah. Kalali, they range from 23 to 8 years old. Gotcha. So at the very least, they're not, bam, just all there at once. That would be, because I know people like that too. who have, you know, 3 or 4 kids all within like 4 years of each other. Seems rough, fun and rewarding, I'm sure, in its own way. But God, I just imagine those terrible twos being especially terrible. Oops. Oh no, I didn't mean to uncheck that. Misc supported mod. There we go. Sacroletius, how you doing? Kolali, hobbies are important for sanity. I brew my own beer, for instance. That's really cool. Tyler does the same, actually, and I definitely agree with you that hobbies are important. Exceptionally important. It keeps you sane, you know? It gives you something to look forward to. I mean, God, I would say that for a lot of us, video games are a major hobby. I have a couple other ones as well, but video games are a big one for me. Definitely like a good de-stressor. Really none of this stuff matters all that much. I can go into like Frostfall and go into I Need. That's all set up already. Loot and degradation. Just get rid of the widgets because they're annoying to me. Still alive and modding. That's good to hear, Sacroletius. It's like, at what point are we more alive than when we're modding, right? That's a joke. Sometimes I'm dead on arrival when I'm modding, and I'm going through 3,000 records, one press at a time. But that's what it takes sometimes. This is all fine. That's all good. It's not that bad. It's not that important. Going all the way up. Ultimate Skyrim. Core settings. Begin. Let's see. I want to be, not like it's going to matter for the purpose of this stress test. Dragon Souls. I'm Dragonborn. Time delay. That's fine. I love that it gives you an option to get shouts even if you're not the Dragonborn. Because we do know that there's a precedent for that. Like, the Greybeards aren't Dragonborn, but they can shout. Ulfric is not Dragonborn, but he can shout. You're supposed to have to train your whole life to do it, barring select exceptions. But I just like that because it allows the opportunities for you to roleplay and not have to be the Dragonborn, but still be able to use shouts. Like, you could make some Mary Sue writing justification saying that you are, you know, some sort of Thume prodigy or something. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you gotta drop a fucking dragon blood in you, or really whatever you want. This is all fine. Preset standing stone ability. I'm gonna make my character preset a fighter. Presets. What is it? Oh, this character name. Oops. Standing stone ability. Hey Ziri, how you doing? Let's see. Ominous presence. Ancient Nordic tongues weren't Dragonborn either. There you go. And like the Draugr. Let's say, unless that's what you're talking about, in which case I agree with you. Let's go to the Lord. How about the Tower? Boom. It would be really nice if I mean, you can see down there it says choose your birth sign. Descriptions are not available at this time. It'd be really nice if the descriptions showed up here. Just enough septum blood in you to eat dragon souls, exactly. Or even, let's say that, I don't know, like maybe you could create some sort of non-soul justification. Dragon souls, choose whether or not your character can absorb dragon souls or is non-dragonborn. Non-dragon, check, not, will learn automatically unlock. See, this is what I mean. If you do this one, you don't even need the dragon souls. You could roleplay it as like you knowing the dragon language well enough and like studying the Thume well enough to just know it yourself. Because really, the Dragonborn, as far as we know, is the only one who absorbs dragon souls in order to, you know, augment his shouts, at least as far as I know. There could be other people who do it, I don't know. Let's see, schools, alteration, primary school. I'm going to go nothing. I don't got any spells. Outfit, light armor, headgear, random, sword and shield, random, sure. Spell selection, don't care. Starting location, don't care. Special options, it's all good. Faction armor, huh? Alright. Begin our adventure. Let's see where it drops us. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is really stress test the game. I think that for stress testing, standard gameplay is going to be the most useful because that's what you are doing, right? When you're trying to like create a test environment, you're trying to see if over the course of standard gameplay, if anything bad is going to happen. But before I do that, I'm going to do my own stress testing, which is very fun. Let's call this guy Grunhungus. This is my character from Dark Souls 3, I think. Hey, Danny, how you doing? The other stress testing that I'm going to do beforehand, I find very enjoyable. It's I use a batch file that someone made a long time ago called Speedrun, and you use it in the console, and then you can fly around the world at crazy speeds and really just force the game to load in as much as possible, as quickly as possible. That's a real stress test. First stream in a while I've been able to catch. New semester's got me busy. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Danny. Although, to be fair, like, I didn't stream last week. I can't remember if you were in the one before that. There's not a ton of streams anyway. You're not missing much. You suddenly feel a sense of apprehension as you swallow a bunch of eggs. Oh, I'm in solitude. We'll go standard. Actually, no, let's go back. We'll go vanilla death, just for the sake of what we're doing here. After a short respite, Requiem is installed. Ooh, look at this. Solitude evening. It's very pretty. Kind of like a little bit of a marine layer, a little bit of fog. Everyone's probably over near the executioner's block to watch Rogbeer get killed. Look at you. Nice coat. Look at this man too. I think he's got a big one. Ooh, yeah. Look at that. And then this dude. He ain't even need it.
Master, it's your time to do with as you please. But what about those who depend on you so much?
What the fuck is he talking about? Weirdo. Alright, so, first things first. Let us do the real stress test. BAT speedrun. Collision on. Woo! Now we're fast. Something I wanted to test as well. Where you going, guy? Uh-oh. There he goes. Mr. Mans. Excuse me. Oh. That, man, I wish there was a way for us to get more lights. And would these ones have lights, or are they just not covered? Sacroletti plays Sonic theme. I should get that. I'll have that be part of the batch, the speed run. Okay, so I can train on this, can't train with this weapon. I believe, actually I did already test this now that I remembered. I think that there may be a way to patch the train and study activators to also give you passive experience when you just use them, like with dynamic things. Here, train combat dummy 2. Normally, if you didn't have train and study installed and you strike these combat dummies, you get experience as well. But that doesn't happen with train and study because it replaces, I believe, because it replaces the original models with its own. I mean, the models are the same, but it replaces the original placement entries with its own proprietary ones that I don't think Dynamic Things recognizes. But it might be possible to edit Dynamic Things so that it does recognize those and applies the XP bonuses as it intends to. And then also you could have it you could combine both functionalities. Ideally. I don't know if it's actually possible, but probably, if I had to guess. I don't know. Now I have the Sonic theme song stuck in my head. It's pretty good, gotta say. I always like that song. Huh? What's up, guys? Alright, well, let's make it daytime because it's too dark. I can't see anything. You guys are wondering what nighttime looks like in 4.0. Looks like this. I think it's very pretty myself. Yo, up here. Whoa, whoa. Whoa. Look at this beautiful moons. These beautiful moons, rather. Khajiit. Pretty cool, I'd say. Definitely dark enough to where, you know, it's like inhibiting for your gameplay, but on a night like this where you have these beautiful moons and clear skies, you can still see a little. It's not entirely impossible to come around and do some adventuring Sacroletius is not that hard to patch, I guess. That's what I would guess. I would assume the same. Most of the time, if you're lucky, patching mods for that kind of stuff is as simple as just inserting another forum ID somewhere that it needs to be. Either editing like a forum ID list or just editing a script to recognize an additional property. Usually not too bad. Alright, well, here comes the fun part. Sacroletius says, I'm a patchman. Sure to start Frostfall. Actually, fuck. Probably should have just not done that. I'm a patchman. You and me both, Sacroletius. You could argue that that's what I do more than any other thing. It's only recently, over the development of 4.0, that proprietary features have become a big emphasis in Ultimate Skyrim. Before that, it's almost entirely compatibility edits. Wow, look at this. Beautiful. Alright, well, here, let's make it daytime. Let's also go into Frostfall if we are going to have it on, which, I mean, honestly, we should, because that'll add the additional scripts. Frostfall is enabled. Gameplay. At max exposure, nothing. That's fine. Vampire behavior, immortal. All good. What we are going to do now is go time scale to 10,000. Let's make it morning really quick here. Noonish. Boom. 9:14. What a wonderful time. Compatibility, but IMO, more importantly, consistency edits. Yes, that is... Are you talking about me or you, or both of us? Because I agree with you that that is the most important thing that you could possibly insert into a large mod list. That consistency is what allows you to suspend your disbelief and believe that you're playing like a contiguous experience that is no different from vanilla in terms of consistency. I guess we'll just hit it. Are you guys ready? Let's go on a tour around the world and see what happens. Now, if we're really lucky, I know, we can get the... Well, hopefully there's no crashes. Look, there's Morthal. But if we're really lucky, we can do a really fun thing where we dip our man in water, like so. And then, come on. It's freezing. I don't believe it's crashing. Here we go. Wait. Okay. Fuck. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can dip your guy in the water and then get him to play the swimming animation as he's flying through the air, which I always found very entertaining for some reason. So you can see the game really does not like when you do this because you're forcing it to load a billion different cells at once. Not at once, but quickly. Look, this water is frigid. But as long as it doesn't crash... What was that? You guys hear that? That's the main thing. If you can get the game, it can jitter and it can stutter all at once, but as long as it doesn't crash, then you are sitting pretty. So I did this a lot during the original development stages, the initial development stages of Ultimate Skyrim. This was a very important part to me to see if I could detect any crashes. If you get random crashes, it's not the end of the world. It's the consistent ones that you can typically iron out. Like if you were always crashing in the same spot, you got a problem. Now we really need the Sonic theme song playing. I'm going to do that actually. Here, give me a second. I'm going to Alt-Tab. Look, it's Horker. I always found them so cute. I don't know why. They're kind of ugly, almost objectively, but I really do like them. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Yeah, Alt-Tab. Skyrim really does not like when I do that. Sonic theme extended. Not Sonic Forces. Let's just go what? Green Hill Zone? Here we go. Let's make sure it's not too loud. That is loud. There we go. Now we're in business. It's a great song, actually. Come on, baby. You gotta give it a second to let me back in. Come on. I know you can do it. You make me Alt-Tab again? I know you can do it. This is called an Alt-Tab stress test, maybe. Come on, Skyrim, you're killing me here. I know you can do it. Here we go. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Let's see. Sacrilegious, I actually fixed another exploit, or whatever you call it, in vanilla. Oh, whoops, can't go that way. When an item is marked as owned, you can just drag it off where no one will see you and steal it there. I made it like an Oblivion, where if you drag an owned item, you get a bounty as well. That's awesome, Sacrilegious. Is there any chance that you've made that available standalone? Because that's something that I would add in a heartbeat, along with, I believe, your other fix, right, where you fix the exploit where you put buckets on people's heads, which doesn't work anymore. This imagery is just ridiculous. Ugh, look at this green water. I think we need to apply our green water fix to the snowfall patch. I don't think that it's been applied yet. Looks pretty. Because I don't think that water is supposed to look like that unless you're in Fallout. What do you guys think? I can send it to you on Discord. I made a lot of these small tweaks. Thank you very much, Sacrilegious. Do me a favor, send me the PM, and then I'll make like I'll throw your thing, all your information into the merge section, if you like. That water would be fine at East March with all the hot springs. Well, that's where it is. If you're curious, those are the hot springs. I don't think they're supposed to be quite so green though, right? Volcanic sulfur water. Does it really look that green? I've been in hot springs, like sulfur water hot springs before, and they definitely have like a greenish tinge to them, but I don't know if it's quite that much. I also think that it's snowfall. It's the ENB's coloration settings based on the weathers. Because there's a couple other spots in the game where the water shows up as overly green. It's a relatively easy fix. Look at us go. Look at that animation. Beautiful. What an austere roleplay experience Skyrim is. It's way better when I don't sprint, because then he does this. Wow. This reminds me of Space Harrier. We were playing Space Harrier actually over the weekend. I was at Tyler's with our buddy Roland, and we were playing through Shenmue 1, the new HD version, because it's one of our collective favorite games. And for those of you who don't know, there are fully functioning arcade games in Shenmue, that a lot of which were actually developed by the lead designer behind Shenmue. Oh, we get a crash? I think it crashed. Skyrim. Did it crash or did it just like Alt-Tab? What happened here? Oh. Fuck me. That's the error that I was trying to get rid of. I think. Can't tell. It's going away too quickly. Fuck. I can't see which one it is. Yeah, it is. It's the R205 or R6025, whatever it is. Hey, Ferfante, how you doing? We're just stress testing the game. Come on. Show me the fucking error. I think it's the R6205, though. I'm like 99% sure. I can't see it. God. Maybe I can get this to... Come on, baby. It is. I just saw it. R6205. Fuck me. Well, I don't... That's the one I really don't know how to fix. It's like this mysterious error that's just plagued us for like a million years. and I was hoping that the anti-crash would fix it. Although, it's also worth mentioning that we don't know with 100% certainty that the anti-crash is installed correctly, but I think it is. So, I don't know how much there is for us to do. My fucking... Hold on, I gotta Control-Delete here. Task Manager. Thank you. Sorry, Skyrim. It's a little loud still. We're gonna do this. Pause our Sonic music. What do I feel like listening to right now? You know what I want to listen to? I'll show you guys. Are you guys Castlevania fans, by chance? If so, you know that the Castlevania music is amazing. My favorite Castlevania song is Bloody Tears, but specifically, there's a version in Judgment that I really like. It's this one. I never played Castlevania Judgment before, but I really like this version. Sacroletia says, it's rumored that it's caused by Jube's quest in Dawnguard. So I've heard that same thing, but I don't know how that could possibly affect our installation here. Is that quest in Dawnguard one of those kind of running in the background processes that's always on your character? I just don't know how it would influence characters that have not touched anything with Dawnguard yet. Grimrock says, Dindu LOD. Really? Why don't we take a look and see if we can find it? Okay, first of all, is anyone right now in the chat, does anyone use New Vegas Anti-Crash with their current Skyrim installation? Ah, that quest is flagged start game enabled. Well, that would do it. Grimrock said, you're sure, huh? But so first question before I get ahead of myself, is anyone using New Vegas Anti-Crash right now with their Skyrim installation? Okay, if so, can you verify for me that this is installed correctly? Nope, current installation is SSE. Okay. Well, if someone there, all right, New Vegas Anti-Crash. So right now, this is just installed in SKSE plugins nvac.dll. For Fonte, I'm hoping you were referring to the fact that you are using New Vegas Anti-Crash. And if so, can you verify that is installed correctly for me? I'll also show you in the actual virtual file structure. You can see it is right here, plugins. Where we go? NVAC. Boom. Okay, so we'll let him check that. In the meantime, I will play this music because it's awesome. I really like this song a lot. I had the pure virtual call error all the way back in 2014 when Dindu LOD didn't even exist. That's my thing too. I'm not entirely convinced that Dindu LOD is responsible. I suppose it can contribute though, and I'm also running the high configuration, which a lot of people have been having trouble with, so I might recommend medium in the future. I really want it, because that is the only crash I feel like I ever experience at this point. And it's just really hard to trace it back to a specific problem. So Sacroletius, if it's caused by Jube's quest in Dawnguard, I wonder what we can do about that. Like, what do you mean? Like, is there a specific explanation that people know of, like, how it could be contributing? And if Dindu LOD can contribute, is this an instance of us just overloading what the game is capable of? Alright, let's see here. We can replace the quest in Dawnguard, building it from the ground up. That sounds super fun. Dawnguard DLC. Yeah, see, here's one from our own subreddit. What do we got here? CTD after Karen with Dawn Guard one time error. You send message only playing blah blah blah. Uh-huh. Okay, so this is interesting. We can set stage and completely finish the quest. Why don't we do that right now, just to see if it has an impact. So you set the quest to be complete, and that obviously would prevent it from continuing to run in the background. View page. Yeah, I mean, the redistributable is installed. Yada, yada, yada. Alright, well, we'll do this for now. Let's go ahead and try completing the Dawn Guard quest. So you tried that, but it still sometimes crashed. Fuck me. Maybe the fact that it starts the game in that enabled state leaves something in the game that still allows the crash to happen. So I would really like to iron that out. Dun, dun. Okay, well this is not. If you enable crash dumps, I mean, I know what the error is. Damn, scratch that. Thought I had it. Turns out I don't. That's okay for Fonte. I'm almost positive that we have it installed correctly. Let's see. Skyrim, New Vegas, anti-crash, R6025. Must include R6025. Because I don't think that it's going to help, and we're not getting anything useful here. Alright, well, at the very least, I'm going to try it out again and see if we can get it to crash in the same way. Which means I want to put my Sonic back on again. There we go. And where is that web page? Give me you. Not here. Let's see what happens. Set stage deal. Okay. Well, that'll stay there. I always have to be careful about where I put my windows when I launch the game because it changes my resolution. Actually, no, it won't change my resolution now because right now my resolution is in 1080p on my primary monitor. How's the music level for you guys? Not too loud, not too annoying? It's going to be stuck in your head for 9 years after this, just so you know. Oof. Whoa, God. You see that? It'd be really nice if we could source this. Is Season 2 going to be in 1440p or something fancy like that? It will be, at the very least, the final render will be in 1440p. If I'm not 100% certain that I'll be able to run the game, just because of the limitations of old school Skyrim, right? The game itself might still have a resolution of 1080p, but the output file I'll be upscaling to 1440p so that I can use YouTube's improved compression algorithm for higher resolutions, which makes a significant difference in the video quality, let me tell you. Why do I have an autosave? There we go. Yeah, for the YouTube compression, that 1440p render will help a lot. Honestly, it wouldn't be impossible to do a 4K one, but I've been experiencing some weird stuff with 4K resolutions on YouTube anyway, so I'm almost more inclined to do 1440p. Ah, there's my autosave. Okay. Let's do this. BAT bot speedrun. There we go. Oops. Let's go. Here we go. Set stage. Why does it want me to do these other stages first? So I can start it. Gotcha. St. Jube. Did I do it? Oh, it wants me to just go through the entire quest. I got St. Jube's Opus. What is that? Oh. Wow. Look, it's even got a custom texture. The rise and fall of St. Jude, the Eradicator, hero of Morrowind, savior of the Dunmer. Jube is the guy who's on your boat, by the way, in Morrowind. I'm gonna read that at some point. Okay. Set time scale to 10,000. I like flying around during the day for some reason. Ooh. Ah. Whoa, up in the air. Wow, look at that. Volumetric weathers, everybody. Now that is a rainstorm. I tell you, although these ENB water droplets are not fantastic, I gotta say. Maybe they've been improved. I'm actually running ENB like 3.19. 0.319. I was right the first time. Which is not the most recent version. Alright, Mr. Man. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can get it. At the very least, if we can get it to still trigger, then we have more data that shows us that, you know, it's not just... It's been a while, but I'm going to jump into my beta 4 install, see if I get that CTD on a new game. Thanks for Fonte, I appreciate it. Just more data is what we need at this point. If I can still get the crash to trigger with the Dawnguard quest completed, it does not, of course, mean that the Dawnguard quest is not responsible or contributing still. It just tells us that it will happen even when the Dawnguard quest is completed. Maybe then we could try disabling any of Dindulad's generation and see if that affects it at all too. We could even do it where we test the Dindu LOD with the Dawnguard quest complete, and then also without. Just anything that gives us more testing data on a variety of different circumstances. That's how you trace this stuff. This is so fun, right? Tracing crashes. It is kind of fun to watch the world of Skyrim pop in and like this, though. I always enjoyed doing this. It's kind of fun to zoom around. Rain looks weird. I agree, Zieri. I'm going to see if updating the ENB binary gives rain any different visual appearance. Alternatively, I'm just going to look for different rain texturing. I think the reason that happens is because the rain is now entirely handled by the ENB, and it might need to stay that way in order to use the really awesome occlusion that is now programmed into ENB by default. But that doesn't mean that we can't adjust the rain appearance of the ENB using any number of methods, I'm sure. I'm going straight to where we experienced the crash last time, right here near Voltheim Towers. This Undeath Tower right here. Look, it's me. The other thing, you know, we can kind of look at right now. You see this like weird texturing on the ambient occlusion. It's almost like gridded, if you can see what I'm doing. One question, BB. Paper map is very bright when using ENB. Is it a problem on my side? Could be, Fiotic, but I doubt it. Let's see. Map. Yeah, I know. Does it look like this? No. I mean, that's fairly bright, I would say, but not so bright that it bothers me. And I have the standard installation for the, you know, the ENB, so, or the one that we recommend for beta. Does it look like that? If so, there's no problem on your side. I use some of the rain textures from the re-engaged ENB. Some of them don't look like crystal shards. I use the texture with more noise. Gotcha. Sacrolette is Tactical, Voltheim, Asis, Populated Series, Requiem, 3, 4, follow. Yeah, that would be so many fucking people. Talk about a stress test. Okay. Whoops. There we go. Now, I want to get rid of this gridded ENB nonsense here. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. There's my cursor. Alright, go down here to... Here we are. Now, what would help this? I want to super sample the... I mean, that does help, but I bet you now it's like a crazy, let's see, FPS. What is my FPS difference? I'm losing like a frame, maybe. Whoops. Everything looks kind of weird. It's almost like it's not even on anymore. It is weird. Okay, let's go down here. Sampling quality, sampling precision. Let's make that high. Whatever gets rid of this weird gridded kind of stuff. If you guys don't see what I'm talking about, look like right here. You see almost like a gridded kind of shadow scenario. Filter quality, this is probably it. Low. Yep, there we go. So that's much better, I think. You put this on lowest, and that's just blech. Let's put on low. I think that's doable for me. Am I losing any frames by doing this? Let's see. Lowest. It looks to be about the same, to be honest. Kind of floating between 46 and 48. Low. Alright, I'm going to leave that for now. I'm actually going to save this configuration. Fiotic, I will turn off the ENB just so you can see the difference. Let's clear the weather too. That'll really show you the difference. So we got kind of like a foggy weather here, right? So, oops. Boom. Go 81A. So here's your beautiful forest. One thing that is worth mentioning too. So there's without your ENB. But the lighting and the weathers are still affected here by snowfall weather. So this would look significantly different if that plugin were not enabled. It's worth remembering as well, I would say. Ooh. Hawks. Actually looks like crows. Here's your ENB on. Boom. Oh, God. Alright, well, back to it. Oh, yeah, now we can do this, but now I can't sprint. Yeah, there we go. It's like I can't sprint anyway. Here. Boom. Look how beautiful this area is. It's one of my faves. Although, as you guys know, if you've watched my Season 1 series, I have a lot of favorite places in Skyrim, quote-unquote. Whoa. Jesus Christ. It's like if this doesn't make you throw up, I don't know what will. Now it really feels like we're Sonic. It's like very frantic. It's actually more fun like this. I've never really done it on the ground. Oh my God. Ow. Oh. Oh. Beautiful. Oh. Woo. Oof. Whoa. Whoa. Oh, now we're really cooking with fire. My God. Whoa. This is wild. Okay, here, let's take a look at this water. That's too green, right? Am I the only one who thinks so? I mean, that's like irradiated fucking... Does hot springs, sulfur hot springs really look like that? I'm hard-pressed to think so. First person. Oh, man. It's kind of crazy. I was thinking about this in relation to Cyberpunk 2077, which is probably like my most anticipated game at the moment. I feel like having the first-person perspective that the Bethesda games offer is actually huge when it comes to immersion and just feeling present in the world. When I was playing The Witcher 3, which I absolutely... Hey, Shadow Shane, how you doing? And they do look like that, huh? Oh, look. Here we go. Here's a good stress test. Civil War battle. Oh my god, and a saber cat. When I was playing The Witcher 3, which is one of my favorite games of the past like 5 years, I had a tremendous time, but I also did feel like just the Elder Scrolls game, something about directly controlling your character and having that immersive like first-person perspective as an option really did like affect my feeling of placement in the world. And I have to wonder if that was not a big part of their reasoning for making Cyberpunk 2077 in first person, you know? I think that that's something they were kind of going for, is really placing players in the world using the first person perspective. And if so, I could totally understand it, because it makes a big difference. It really does kind of plant you in these worlds. Also, volumetric snow. I love... Whoa! Whoa, Dawnstar! Well, so far we're doing okay, but that really doesn't mean anything. Whoa! I'm actually kind of hoping for the R6025 crash at this point, just because it's like if the solution here is to see how, so this is the other thing I'm talking about. These waters here in the swamps and also over there near Morthal they use some of like the same data as the other water that we were just looking at. And when you have these weathers, like these obscure ones, they end up super green. And it's a really easy fix. You just need to see if it's clear weather, it's not quite so bad. You can still see a little bit of green, and it's not the best. Also, I love Morthal. The swamps are just, they're really unique. I've said this in the past too, that lucidity. Oh wow, I've actually managed to catch one of your streams. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. Happy you managed to catch one. One thing that I really like about Skyrim is the geographical diversity. I believe Maik the Liar has a comment about how the developers intentionally chose to favor geographical diversity over the super snowy precedent that the lore had kind of already set in previous games. And this is something we know they're not opposed to doing. Just look at Oblivion, since they went with the decision to make Cyrodiil into a relatively generic kind of forest fantasy setting versus the jungles that are commonly described in the lore. But as we know as well, anything in the Elder Scrolls can be retconned with relative ease thanks to shit like dragon breaks, and really just... it seems like a million different ways that something that was one way can be made a different way and still not quote-unquote break lore. The biome diversity made Skyrim so memorable, which makes me look forward to the Fallout 76. I agree with you, Shadow Shane. Whoa! It's important, I think. I've said this in previous streams as well, and in just Season 1, I'm sure. Skyrim is not it's a pretty big place, especially for a game that came out in 2011, right? But it's not huge, and the more you play it, the more you are going to be traversing these same areas over and over. The last time we were talking about this, it was in reference to the importance of creating dynamic events and systemic gameplay. Just keep creating a dynamic feel to the same areas, so that even though you are technically traversing the same locations, it can be different. You know, every time through, there's different things happening, even though you might be in the same area. Like, something new can happen there that keeps you intrigued. And that's why we were talking about it last time. But I think that the geographic diversity helps with that a lot. It helps that feeling of dynamism, if that's a word. I believe it is, but don't quote me on it. Just because, I don't know, it's like, even if you were traversing the same areas, if you go from the hot springs, like for one quest, over to Markarth for another quest, it impacts like your experience, it impacts the pacing, it makes it feel a little bit different, and it makes it feel less homogenized, I think. And if the whole game, if the whole environment were just completely the same, like, you know, super snowy, let's say, I think it would get pretty boring pretty fast. And one thing, you know, however you feel about Bethesda, one thing I think they do objectively well is world art. There are a lot of... Whoa, are we back in... Wow. In the fog, it's pretty hard to realize... And most of the time, I'm not getting lost in Skyrim. Sacroletia says... Oh, I missed one here. Remember, realism isn't game design. Just because it would make sense for it all to be a giant snowy waste doesn't mean it's a good idea for your game. It's true that realism... It's an interesting idea. I was thinking about this a lot, actually, this weekend. So I had a YouTube commenter who was talking to me about Requiem. A lot of the time, I'll find people in my YouTube comments for Season 1 who are... They're enjoying the series, right? And enjoying watching Ultimate Skyrim, but they don't want to play it for themselves for one reason or another. I think one of the more common reasons is that a lot of people are not sold on Requiem, and specifically the idea of a de-leveled world. And this was one such user, and he was talking to me about his own installation and his difficulty, his self-geared difficulty, that still utilized a leveled world, but made it significantly harder in a few different ways. Oh, I think I got it. I think I got the... Did I get the... Oh, message from Crash Fixes. Okay, well, it's a different one. What does it say, though? I can't see it. Oh, wait, yeah. Skyrim has failed to allocate memory. How about that? Man, we haven't got a failed to allocate memory crash in forever. Well, this is interesting. Fishwish. Hey, love your work, man. Do you think this will work with upcoming mods like Skyblivion or Skywind? Oh, that is a question that I cannot answer for you, my friend. I don't know how it would work. Yeah, it's you're almost talking about trying to run Ultimate Skyrim on like Fallout 4 or a completely separate game. I don't know exactly what result you would hope for by adding Ultimate Skyrim to Skyblivion or Skywind, but like I said, it's almost like asking if two different games, if mods from one will work in the other. That's kind of what I do with Skyrim SC since Requiem isn't there yet. I tend to use things like Wildcat to make the combat more difficult. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, this idea that I think for a lot of people, they don't want the de-leveled world, but they do want additional difficulty because the vanilla game is fairly easy. And for me, the importance of the de-leveled world goes a little bit in a different direction. The difficulty is really nice because it's boring if it's not challenging. But for me, the de-leveled world I favor most for my personal immersion. And what I mean by that is that, let's say, okay, if Falmer, these really gross, really strong elves that live in like the cracks and the crags of like the deep world in Skyrim, if I know internally that those Falmer are strong or weak relative to my own character, it really messes with my enjoyment of having that character in the world. The primary influencer of my own personal immersion is knowing that my character is not the center of the game universe, knowing that the game universe itself exists in a certain fashion and that my character themselves exists in a certain fashion, and the two are free to interact with each other, but they do not affect each other inherently. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like when the Falmer or every creature is de-leveled. I gotta get rid of that fucking Sonic music, I'm sorry. When everything is de-leveled, it's like those populations, those different factions, they have their own strength and abilities and attributes that they will always have irrespective of you, and that to me feels a lot more analogous to the real world. And for me, just, I don't know, it makes it more fun for me to inhabit these worlds, because the whole idea is that, you know, I exist as a character who exists within this larger world. I enjoy much more the feeling of being a cog in the machine and learning more about the world in order to accomplish goals that I set myself, as opposed to the world secretly behind the scenes looking at me, looking at what I'm doing, and then adjusting itself according to me. That is just, I don't know, it kind of doesn't sit with me right. Here we go. Okay, Sonic, I feel like I'm in a fever dream. I really have to get rid of that. It's killing me. Okay. Let me get crash fixes. God damn it. I'm just gonna have to straight up kill Skyrim, I think. Skyrim, die. Thank you. Where is my Sonic song? Not that one. This one. Okay, stop. Oh god, thank you. Let's see. I'm personally not really into a D-leveled world. I love that it makes the start of the game hard, but I don't like being overpowered at the end game. I want to feel challenged at every level. Then again, I would like to feel progression in my character development. Once I start one-shotting enemies, it's time to start a new game. I mean, I see that. I feel like the most common counter argument against the D-leveled world is that it becomes possible to overpower your character at like the end game. I think that to a degree, definitely a scaled, the whole purpose of a scaled world, right? Like the core purpose of it, the original, not, maybe I shouldn't say the whole purpose because there are, you know, other bonuses and pros and cons, but the core purpose of a leveled world is difficulty scaling. It's being able to more easily provide a consistent difficulty experience at whatever level the character is. So like you said there, it's, you know, even if your character is level 30 and they have a whole lot of abilities and they have good equipment and whatever, a leveled world allows you to look at what the character is, gauge his relative strength, and then plop a enemy in the game that should give the player, based on those criterion, a certain level of difficulty when fighting that enemy, right? The whole point being that it's easier to provide your players with a combat encounter that you can count on being a certain level of difficulty. That's much harder to do in a D-leveled world where, as someone said here, Shadow Shane said, you can, like, say you intend bandits to be kind of like this, like, you know, this difficult to fight. When they're locked at like a certain level of difficulty and the character can, you know, has like total freedom to do whatever they want to do, that character could very well go and, you know, wail on a bunch of mud crabs for like 30 levels, which would be super not fun for that character probably, or that player, and then go over and just absolutely wipe the floor with all those bandits, which is also not that fun. I suppose maybe the trade-off there is that the D-leveled world relies on the player a little bit more to dictate their own experience, and that's not, a lot of players don't like that. So I definitely get the pros and cons to both. It's just, and like the idea of being able to more carefully provide, or to provide a more consistent difficulty experience for your players, I get the pro of that, and it's a big one. It just, when I know that that's what's happening behind the scenes, I don't know. It's what's a good word to describe it? It just completely takes me out of the entire experience. My goal with like my own installation is to create this systemic, like a true living, breathing world created through dynamic, systemic interactions that are wholly unpredictable and based entirely on what pieces and systems exist within this game world. The joy and the fun and the immersion for me comes from having that world interact with itself in interesting and dynamic ways, and me as the player never knowing exactly what is going to happen because of those systemic interactions. That to me is not really possible in a scaled difficulty experience, because at all points the game is looking straight at you as the player, as the center of the universe, and crafting everything around it. The difference is like, if you guys have ever seen the Rick and Morty episode where they're in the simulation, right? And the idea is that they're essentially on this gigantic treadmill where when they're walking, it's like how any game renders visually, right? Or like renders its graphics. Either the game is rendering in a big circle around you, and as that circle moves, the things that are moving out of the circle are being de-rendered, and the things that are moving into the circle are being rendered. Or alternatively, in some games now, you have like there was like that GIF on Horizon Zero Dawn, right, where you can see that there's with the player's field of vision, everything within the field of vision is being rendered so that you can see it looks beautiful, but everything behind the player is being de-rendered in order to allow the game to, have these awesome visuals. That analogously is what I feel scale difficulty does to the game world itself. The whole thing is just a constant cardboard facade being placed in front of your eyes, saying, wow, look how dangerous like this thing is. Like, wow, you came into this cave and like there's this really tough monster like at the end of it. Like, he lives here. It's like, except for he doesn't. He was placed there the second you walked in, and he was placed there. The one that was placed there is according to the stats and the numbers that you had when you walked into the dungeon. And when I know that's what's happening, it's just tougher for me to enjoy myself, I would say. Let's see, I skipped over. Sorry about that rant. I missed a lot of chat. Let's see. Lucidity, I get that completely. Like a mining village is about to go broke because of the frostbite spiders in the mine. Then here comes this vagabond wearing nothing but furs and a makeshift bow, running in and clearing it out. See, I agree with you. I get your point. What I'm saying is, like, you can definitely, like, let's say you had a vagabond runs in with a makeshift bow and wearing nothing but furs. If that vagabond is also like a level 2 guy who has no actual combat experience but can just take down those frostbite spiders because he's the main character, and like they don't want to tell the player no and they want the player to feel like the big old special hero, I agree, it's completely ridiculous. If on the other hand you had this murder hobo come into town, let's say he's only got furs and he's only got like a crappy bow, but he's like some super skilled guy, like that's something you could do in Requiem, right? In D-leveled world, you could very easily be like a super skill. Oh, and especially in Ultimate Skyrim now with the new death mechanics where you lose your items and stuff. Let's say you're like a level 30 dude. You're extremely skilled with the bow. You've taken down much tougher challenges. But for whatever reason, at that specific moment, you only have some makeshift furs and you have a makeshift bow. You might still be able to take down those spiders because you're just that badass. That to me feels like a far more immersive experience. I feel like I agree with what your core point is, that a brand new green adventurer, quote unquote adventurer, it's basically the equivalent of like a peasant who decided that he wanted to be an adventurer one day. It's like, well, guess what? That doesn't make you, I mean, I guess you are an adventurer if you're going on adventures, but it doesn't make you a skilled fighter. Frostbite spiders are massive spiders with crazy paralysis venom running through their teeth, and it's not reasonable to expect you to be able to kill those monsters. And I guess in this kind of going back to the argument of leveled versus de-leveled, the solution there, which is like, okay, well, frostbite spiders should be more powerful, and so you make them more powerful so that even if you are level 2, you can't take them out. And then, the typical way of allowing you to still feel a progression in a scaled world is to provide a cap on how powerful those spiders can ever be. So, maybe if you try and beat them at level 2, it's not going to go well for you. If you try and beat them at level 15, they stopped scaling with you at level 8, let's say. So it's possible for you to feel that progression. I think that's a cool way to do it. I think that if someone asked me to design a scaled system that still feels all right and doesn't completely ruin the player's immersion, that's probably how I do it. It's just not for me still. It's like when I know what's going on behind the scenes, it still bugs me. I don't know. Let's see. So I don't know what to tell you here, Lucidity. That's literally what TS adventurers do and what Nord adventurers do. Our mine was full of spiders. Then Ragnar the Red showed up and single-handedly killed them all with his sword and leather armor. Yeah, see, I'm talking about level 1 character running in and fixing a problem the town's guards couldn't handle. I agree with that. It's like Sacriletius. I never want to feel like I'm overpowered. I get that's a common counter argument against the leveled world, but the factual, if I think the best analogy is this: in the real world, which you could argue is the basis for all fictional worlds, right? In that our real world is a world, it has fundamental laws, it has fundamental parameters and limits that dictate what is possible within that world. And in that way, every fictional world is kind of made as a model. The real world is the only world that we know, right? So any world that's created fictitiously is sort of an analog of ours. In our world, it is absolutely possible for you to become just overpowered at stuff. It's just like how things are, you know. It's like if you dedicated your entire life to becoming like the, you know, like a super fucking crazy good martial artist, and let's say that, you know, there are no, like, you don't experience any cancer or just kind of random happenstance things that can happen in our world that prevent you from being the super badass guy, you will eventually get to a point where you can fuck up like almost any other person in the whole world with your martial arts skills. You will eventually get to that overpowered point. That's just kind of how it goes. Once again, barring any sort of, you know, crazy random thing happening to you. So to me, I would rather have a world where, you know, like a fictional world in a video game that is possible. Like, it's not, when you're playing the video game, I understand it's not as fun. Like, once you become overpowered, then, you know, suddenly nothing provides like a challenge anymore. I get how that's not super fun, but I think that just that tail end of like the end game experience, having that part be not all that great is not worth. I think that everything up to that point is super awesome, because you get a much more personal progression feel. There's like everything that's gotten you to that level of power is what you decided to do. I think it's a much more personal story. I think well, there's a reason they call Requiem the role-playing overhaul, right? Is that the major bonus of a de-leveled world is that you are constantly choosing what to do and how to spend your time in order to meet goals that you are also setting. So by the time you get to that overpowered point, like what's gotten you there is just entirely dictated by you. It wasn't the game being like, okay, at level 10 we're going to give him this enemy that's going to make him that much more powerful. At level 15 we're going to give him this enemy that's going to make him that much more powerful. And that no matter where you are in the world or what you're doing, your decisions are still being made for you in the case of like a level world, I would say. Ferfante says it feels like a work made only for you rather than a real world. That is definitely my point. Shadow Shane, here's my take on it. I can one-shot... Oh, shit. Oops, I pulled my audio interface down. I can one-shot literally an army of ants. That doesn't mean I'm overpowered completely, since I know that if I fought another person, I'd probably lose. So at the very best, you can only extend the time it takes for you to best your enemies. Then at a certain point, all lower-level enemies should be removed as they're pointless to fight. Well... I don't know about that, though. At a certain point, all lower-level enemies should be removed because they're pointless to fight, because when you start as the most lower-level enemy, that's not the case, you know? Like, if you start at 0... I mean, I guess if we're fighting ants, but that would be the case. And, well, hey, actually, so in that direct analogy, there are no enemies like ants in Skyrim. If the argument is that at that point the lowest level enemies should be removed, that essentially is the case in Skyrim, and I guess that's the reason why you can't fight bugs, you know, or like why when you go to get a butterfly, it's not like the butterfly puts up a fight, but anything that can conceivably put up a fight in Requiem, anything that could challenge you as someone with no martial experience and no adventuring experience, those things do fight, and they are hard, like a wolf, you know. Like, think about, okay, if you, and of course I get the premise for vanilla Skyrim is that you are already, I guess, kind of like a semi-experienced warrior, but also that doesn't make sense to me because you don't have any experience. But let's just say for the sake of argument that vanilla Skyrim, your guy has a little bit of experience, and in Requiem, they don't. Requiem is specifically designed so as to say, when you start your character, before you apply your perks or whatever, you have no experience whatsoever as an adventurer that you are about to become if you choose, right? I think that's analogous to most of us who work like desk jobs. Like, for example, like I go to the gym 4 times a week. That is the most like physical prowess experience that I have, and I can tell you firsthand, I'm really not all that strong. I'm trying, but point being, if I walked out of my town into the wilderness and there was a wolf that came up and tried to kill me, I think that I would have a really hard time trying to kill that wolf. And that's what Requiem does, right? If you leave town and a single wolf comes up, tries to maul you, it's probably going to do that, as it probably would, because once again, here the analogy is that we, as completely inexperienced, real world denizens, are the analog to Requiem's level 1 character who also has no experience doing that kind of thing. You contrast that against like Skyrim, like vanilla Skyrim, and you walk right out of town and you find a wolf, and you have like a sword that you just found, and it's no sweat. It's like you just take that thing on immediately and it's done. There's like zero chance practically that that wolf is gonna to take you out. And that I'm not a fan. Let's see here. What will the scope of the new death mechanics be? I think it's just a Dark Souls system where you drop your things and respawn at your last sleeping point. Will there be an option for Dead is Dead? That system hurts me, but I still kind of like it. Yeah, so as of right now, yeah, okay. Let's see here. Will there still be an option for Dead is Dead? That system hurts me. I still kind of like it. So right now, the death system in Skyrim allows you to choose between the new system, like we're calling it standard for now, that gives you it works exactly like Shadow Shane just said, where when you die, you drop your stuff. If you die again in between those 2 points, then your stuff is gone forever. So that's like the standard system, and that's barring any sort of quest items or anything like that. And you'll respawn at a point of your choosing somewhere that you last slept. There is also currently an option for classic permadeath right now still, so if you want, you can just put on permadeath, and it works the same way that permadeath always did through Dead is Dead. I would say it arguably works even better, but that's because we have the advantage of several years on the Dead is Dead implementation. Or you can choose to not use any of the new death mechanics and just use standard vanilla loading and saving. I also plan on introducing a hardcore mode that I kind of imagine myself playing with for season 2 maybe. Still kind of deciding about that, but the hardcore mode will make it so that your items, the reason I think that the Dark Souls system of having your items or having your souls, whatever, drop as a recoverable bloodstain is that in Dark Souls, enemies respawn when you die, so it's still a challenge to get back to where you died. That's kind of true in Skyrim as well, which is why we've kept the bloodstain system entirely. But I also thought it would be fun if you have a hardcore version of that death mechanic where when you die, your shit is just gone immediately and there's no chance for you to go and get it back. I think that would add potentially another level of tension to the concept, and it's fairly easy to implement. It just requires that we don't spawn the bloodstain anymore. So that'll probably make it in as well, if you like it. Sacaletia says, I personally don't like that in my game. The world should be bigger than the player, not the other way around. I would say that actually sounds like the argument for a de-leveled world. That's what I would say too. When the world is de-leveled, it's, in my opinion, 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger than the player, and 100 times bigger than it could ever be when the player is the center of the universe. That's my whole analogy with the the treadmill and like the rendering, right? Is that when the world is scaled to the player, the world can only ever be as big or as small as the player's experience level. Like when an enemy is always 10 levels higher than the player, it doesn't matter if your player is a completely green newbie adventurer or if they're like the most storied guy in the whole land, that enemy is still the exact same degree of difficult for that character, assuming once again that there's no cap on like that enemy's experience or whatever. I keep forgetting that you're behind on chat. I was agreeing with you, Belmont. Fire ants, new mobs, we're all gonna die. Do rabbits put up a fight? They do not. That's probably the worst reason to lose a DID character. I swear to God, I got attacked by a fox one time, but maybe that never happened. Let's see how far behind on chat I am. Okay. Sacraletis vanilla level scaling enemies are as strong as the player. 1-to-1 scaling, my level 1-to-1 scaling. My level scaling enemies will always be much stronger than the player. So, well then in that case, what's the point of, I mean, that is very similar to how Oblivion did it. But if your level scaling ensures that enemies will always be much stronger than the player, doesn't that mean that the best way to ensure victory is to never level up? Because that's what the problem that Oblivion ran into. If the only thing that you stand to gain by leveling up is like, I mean, I guess it kind of introduces more abilities for the player to work with, but if the enemies are also getting stronger and also experiencing more abilities, it's like it makes it so that the like leveling up your character and strengthening your character is actually making the everything else in the game stronger too. You know what I mean? Let's see. Here's a mage using a warhammer. He suddenly knows how to use a warhammer effectively. Why would a mage use a warhammer for war? Because they found it on the ground and they're out of mana. Wolf attacks. I'm suddenly a weapon master. And then all your stamina disappears. That's the point. You got it. And vanilla stamina is pointless. Credit someone who does not know how to use it, and the mage is not a weapon master. Exactly. When the world is de-leveled, I just feel more incentive to metagame, analyze, and optimize. It doesn't immerse me. It de-immerses me because I now plan what content I can do, when I can do it, and the best route to take to prepare for it. See, it's so interesting because I feel like I get where you're coming from, Tizarnal, but that exact process that you just described is what makes me feel immersed in the game world. Because once again, if game worlds are analogs to the real world, if fundamentally at the end of the day every fictitious universe is based on our own world, in the sense that, you know, it is like our world is the only world that we ever know. So when we are creating another world, even if there are fantastical elements, it's based on our own. I don't know if I'm explaining this like well. We don't know how to create a world that is like fundamentally different from our own in terms of like not having laws that govern it and stuff, right? That's like outside our realm of comprehension. Anyway, if you are playing a game if you are like in the real world and I tasked you with the goal of, I don't know, like assassinating some world leader or something, which you can think of like an analogous goal in a game like Skyrim or something, and be like, all right, here's a contract, go kill the leader of like that bandit camp. If we look at the real world analog as being like you assassinating some world leader or something, you would totally have to like train and plan and like optimize your route and like think about ways that would actually allow you to do that. So for me, that's where the immersion comes in. If that makes sense. But the idea of it's just funny to me, because I totally believe you that the planning what to do and like how to do it and taking the best route to take and preparing for it, I guess I can see how that would not help your immersion, because you feel like you are like looking at the game as a game, right? And then looking at like the best like way to like min-max it. I totally get that. But for me, it's kind of the opposite, where I'm doing the exact same things. You know, I'm looking at the best route to do it and like what stuff I'm going to need to best enhance my chances of accomplishing the goal that I've set. And like looking at what challenges I'm going to face along the way and using that information as well. That to me feels like I'm really existent in the world, because that's what I would have to do in our world if I were doing something similar. If that makes sense. Let's see, that's what bothers me. I don't think a mage should be able to swing it effectively without a perk point in it, like kind of with Dark Souls and the dexterity requirements. Yep, I mean, I agree with you, Lucidity. We look at perks as the game's analog for experience, then I agree. Still, it's more immersive argument doesn't work for me when I'm playing a game. Well, it's I would say that the immersion argument, the whole thing is the immersion argument. I would say that for you, Sarnal, it sounds like these actions specifically are unimmersive to you, and that makes it like not enjoyable, I would say, which I totally get. This is why immersion, quote unquote, is such a weird concept, because it is so subjective, you know? Like, let's take Dark Souls as an example. I guarantee to you that there are people, so I agree with Lucidity that like in Dark Souls, I really love the Dark Souls games, and one of the things I like about it is that, you know, like a lot of weapons have specific stat requirements, right? So like I can't use this great hammer because I don't yet have the 20 strength requirement. That to me is immersive, because I look at the stats as a analog for my character's experience, and that makes sense to me. And so the effect that it has on my character's ability feels correct within the parameters of the Dark Souls world. However, I could totally also see if someone on the flip side sees the fact that, you know, that strength rating is just a number that they have to get, and then they can suddenly use this you know, big old hammer or whatever. I could totally see how somebody else might look at that as totally unimmersive and like metagamey and weird and inorganic, right? Because you could also say like, all right, well, I'll avoid that argument. Just the idea that, you know, because there's like numbers associated with it, and because you're using this kind of really abstract concept of taking soul numbers and like filling them into your meter or your menu with all the other like little stat numbers, for a lot of people, I think I can see how that would be inorganic and maybe inimmersive, if that makes sense. I want to find a balance between making leveling not pointless but never becoming overpowered. If I can one-shot a dragon, it's time to start a new game. I was never a fan of level caps. It makes everything feel static. I mean, if the player can level, why can't the enemies? Now that is an interesting point, and something that I really like. Yeah, I use my own equipment perk restrictions mod, which disallows me to use anything without the correct perk, not even fur armor or iron weapons. So this idea that if the player can level, why can't the enemies? Now that I agree with you on, and I probably, when it comes to these whole arguments of like static versus, you know, leveled, if I had to think about how the experience, like the player, I think that might be the next area of evolution when it comes to these types of questions, because I think you're right that other, like, okay, I was not considering it from this perspective, but if you look at level scaling not just as a purely game concept, which is kind of how I think about it, but if you think about it as an abstraction of the fact that other enemies and other creatures in the world are also growing at the same time that the player is growing, that's kind of a cool concept, and it's pretty close to how things behave in the real world. Once again, let's say we'll go back to that analog, that argument of, you know, if you're training to become like the best martial arts guy in the world, right? Well, as you're doing, let's say you have a rival, as you're training to be the best martial arts guy, there's other people out there too who are training to become the best martial arts guy. And just because you have made tremendous progress in your own abilities does not mean that they also haven't made tremendous progress in their own abilities. And in that case, it kind of makes sense that, you know, other stuff gets stronger as you do. And you could also make the argument that if you're not training the correct things, this would be like a defense of like Oblivion level scaling, for example. If you're not training the correct skills, let's say, like, you know, if you're gaining experience and that you're learning how to cook, but meanwhile your rival is like still learning how to be the best martial artist, 2 years from then, when you guys face off against each other, you may beat him in a cooking contest, but he's probably going to whoop your ass if you guys are fighting martial arts, right? I don't know, it's an interesting idea, and I wonder if, I mean, I guess it's the question that any game designer who's trying to build out like a difficulty curve or a progression curve has had to answer. But it's like, what is the compromise? What is the compromise between having a world that is leveled around the player? Oh, well, there you go. Shit, this is getting me to think about some interesting stuff here. What if you did this? So the idea is that in a de-leveled world, the problem is that enemies are not getting stronger along with the player, right? And that it's like unrealistic in that regard. But the problem with the scaled world is that the player now becomes the central dictator of the experience and difficulty of all the other enemies. What if enemies were not static and that they could still grow and, you know, gain experience, but their growth and experience and even the ways in which they choose to grow and apply their experience, like, that's completely independent from the player's experience. I think a good example of this type of thing would be if you guys are familiar with that mod that came out, I can't remember the name of it. I believe it's still kind of in the relatively early stages, but it really caught my attention when it first came out. It's for Skyrim. It makes it so that factions have their own kind of internal progression and behaviors and like goals. It's almost like a slightly more advanced version of immersive patrols, in which like factions dynamically try to take territory, get beaten back, they grow in strength, maybe they get stronger like over time. Yeah, so lucidity. Oh shit, I missed some of this stuff. Zeri, not like real world. That's why we have permits on everything. It's like simulator of our country. You can move here. Sacrilegious, like in Shadow of Mordor, when you defeat an orc, you'll meet them later on, and they'll be stronger as well. Yes, it's exactly what I'm talking about. Time and Space says, "Hey Belmont boy, did you play Oscuro's Oblivion Overhaul?" I did, like, super briefly. It was right at the end of when I stopped playing Oblivion. I installed it, but honestly, I could not tell you any of the changes that it made, or I don't have even close to enough experience with it to say what it even did, to be honest. Time and Space. Lucidity says, instead of player-based, it would be something else-based. Yes, and what I'm proposing is, like, the other thing it would be based on is maybe time. Because time, right, that's the thing that all of us are, like, that's what our experience is based around. Like, all of us here in this chat, right, from this time right now, for here at PST, it's 11:51, from here to the end of today, we are all going to have gained experience, right? But the stuff that we gain experience in could be totally different based on what happens to us today and what we choose to spend our time doing today. I think that would be your basis for the, like, if you're building like an open world game, right? That's what you would use as your other thing that the enemy leveling is based around. Say, you know, over a certain amount of time, like, let's say if Skyrim was built so that your character's progression is independent of your enemies, they also progress, but also independent of the player. Let's say that your character just decided to do nothing but, you know, sit around for a month. Meanwhile, you had a faction of fighters, like bandits or something, who were specifically training really hard in order to get stronger. There would be like a discrepancy there, right? Like, the bandits will have gotten much stronger martially, and the player will not have gotten stronger martially at all. I think that would be a potentially really immersive experience. However, it also creates the problem of, it's like, all right, well then, what happens if the player then goes out to try and kill those bandits and totally can't? I feel like you have to put in some sort of mechanism for the player to understand at a glance how strong the enemies that they face are. There's kind of precedent for this in some mods, like Guess the Distance does something like that. I think Requiem was even putting in a feature, or they want to put in a feature like that. You would also have to, I guess, create like a point in the game, like a fail state, where the player, let's say they've neglected their martial skills for long enough, like everything else in the world has eventually gotten strong enough to where now the player can't fight anything anymore. I guess that would have to just be allowed in the same way that the player is allowed to become super crazy overpowered to the point where fighting stuff is not fun anymore. But then it's like, all right, what? Do you just lock yourself out of being able to do all the stuff in the game if most of the stuff in the game is based on being able to fight things? It's a pretty wild idea. But this is the kind of stuff I feel like that, like, these are the kind of conversations that eventually result in gameplay experiences that are entirely, like, new and original, or at least ideas. Maybe if you try to actually take a proof of concept like this, or take an idea like this and make it into a proof of concept, you would just end up with like a game that is totally unfun to play, and no one would want to play it. But I feel like it could be really awesome, you know? I feel like it would be like the perfect kind of crossroads between having your player not be the center of the universe, but also allowing everything else in the universe to progress independent of the player. Smokey Bear said organic factions. That's the mod I was thinking of, and that's why the idea was so intriguing to me. Also, really nice to see you, Smokey Bear. Also, what is it, 11:54 right now? I'm going to give it an additional 10 minutes, just so you guys are aware. This is how XCOM EW/EU and XCOM 2 work. The aliens roll out more dangerous threats and upgraded basic aliens based on time passed instead of player advancement. That's what I'm thinking. That sounds, Sacroletti says, that sounds awesome, TBH. I really like these discussions. Even though we disagree on certain parts, it's good food for thought to improve the game even more. I totally agree with you, man. Well, and this is what I mean, where it's like, I totally get where you're coming from on this idea that, like, okay, well, while the player, you know, in the de-leveled world, while the player is like gaining all this experience and shit, and while you do get this, you could say, higher emphasis on the player's personal progression, what are the enemies doing during this time? Just like sitting around waiting for this guy to get so powerful that he can just like face roll them? Like, that doesn't seem like something they do. Or maybe like some bandits who are all shitty and not good at what they do, like not good at their job of being bandits. Maybe they just like sit around getting drunk, and like those are the ones that the player can conceivably face roll after the player's been training. But like there's got to be some bandits out there that are like well organized, they are ambitious, like committed to either taking more stuff or taking more territory or whatever the hell they want to do, who are like training every day to like be badass. Like those ones should grow themselves like independent of the player, and then the player, having experienced whatever growth they have, when those two people meet, if that happens, it would create like an even more dynamic scenario. It's an exciting thought. I agree to like think about. OOO de-leveled the game like Requiem does. Very interesting. So like everyone starts out weak, like with the war between the Stormcloaks and the Imperials. There would be some who died during combat. Those who survived become stronger. Exactly. And then you want to talk about how a lot of what goes on in Skyrim, a lot of the faction gameplay feels really boring. I think the reason that it feels super boring is because you don't really have any ways to like meaningfully impact what's going on, right? Like all you have, like the Civil War, nothing will ever happen in the Civil War as long as the game goes on, because like if you're not doing the quest lines, like the quest lines are the only thing that can advance the Civil War in any way in either direction. And so if you don't do those quest lines, you're left with this relatively unreactive world where, you know, at the end of the day that like the Civil War, like even in Ultimate Skyrim, like the immersive patrols going around, right? Like it's nice because it adds a little bit more reactivity or a little bit more to make the world feel alive. But at the end of the day, those patrols, the Imperials and the Stormcloaks, they're going around in like preset circuits. They are fighting, and the way the fights play out is a little bit dynamic, right? Because it can be determined by several different factors. It doesn't always play out in the same way, and it'll impact what happens after that, like who's, you know, left to move on to the next place or whatever. But that's as much influence or as much reactivity as the player can ever induce. What if instead you had these two factions that are fighting each other, and over time they will get stronger based on their numbers composition, based on, let's say, what officers are still alive and still around. What if like, I don't know, you created a system where like this deployment of like 30 Stormcloak soldiers has a couple like officer individuals, and maybe like the total number of soldiers plus like the bonus offered by the officers allows them to grow at like a certain rate. You can imagine a scenario whereby you locate an Imperial camp, let's say, and you find the officer, you assassinate the officer, thereby removing that like multiplier bonus to their growth. And if you didn't do that to like the Stormcloaks, let's say, these two deployments now have a discrepancy in terms of their growth rate, and that allows one of them to potentially become stronger over time. Or maybe you could influence how the factions became stronger or weaker in other ways by, like, I don't know, maybe you started doing some sort of research for the Stormcloak army, or like you did quests for like an important guy in the Stormcloak hierarchy, even like the court mage or something for Windhelm, and because of the research, because of the quest that you did, now Stormcloak soldiers have access to some additional advantage that they didn't have before. Just really interesting ways to like impact what's going on in the world. Obviously this would all be super awesome, right? It just becomes the more complex you try and make things, the crazier it gets to develop. And I agree definitely with Sacroletius in particular, how these kinds of conversations are really fun to have because you can come up with all these crazy ideas. But I know for a fact too that a lot of these major AAA development companies, I think a lot of the designers there also, I wouldn't be surprised if they had ideas very similar to the kind of stuff that we're talking about right here. It's just a matter of manpower and the time it would take to implement, whether or not it's even possible, whether or not there's any precedent for it, just a million different things, publisher kind of pressures and all kinds of stuff. But man, it does make me excited to think about being able to do something like that someday. The vampires, which get more numerous. BB, I've just noticed that Bastard Sword does have neither meshes nor textures. Seems to be completely invisible. Should I report on Discord too? Yes, I would report that on the Discord, Feodic. I appreciate it. Typically, that just means that one of the either the mesh or the texture path is incorrect. Lucidity says, I mean, it would make trainers more important if that happened. Like the trainers are there for a reason. I agree with you. If it had like some actual factional impact, we'll call it. Mac Mora says, as a player, you invest in a broader set of skills than the enemies usually do, right? Well, that could be the case if you designed it that way. But let's say you had a wide variety of factions, right? That, you know, beyond just enemies. Or maybe if, you know, the faction relations were a big emphasis, then any of these factions you could turn into enemies. But you could even program the game so that, let's say you had, you know, let's use the like existing factions in the game for the sake of simplicity. Let's say you have bandits, you have Stormcloaks, and you have the Thalmor. So each of these three factions are different from each other in some significant ways. They have different goals, and what if these goals were considered when determining how each of these factions would advance given enough time? Let's say that the bandits in particular would focus very heavily on stealth skills and also martial skills because they have to attack in groups. They're outlaws, so they can't really afford to be seen. So they would have to attack using guerrilla tactics is what I meant to say. They can't really afford to be, you know, like spotted. The success of their continued lifestyle depends on their ability to like do hit and run style attacks where they are not captured, where they can get away and rob people and also not be seen as they leave, like that kind of thing. They don't take prisoners maybe. So that kind of like stealth skills and martial skills are their biggest like thing. Maybe a little bit of skills in like life skills like fishing or cooking or something. While maybe the Stormcloaks as a military faction, their skills or their experience, over time is focused somewhere else. Maybe they also do a lot of martial training, but the type of martial training that they do is different. They're more actual like formation and actual like military strategy tactics. Maybe they also have experience put into like some skill for like informational warfare, something also like the Thalmor would probably do, but the Thalmor at the same time are also training their mages because they're high elves, and that's like a distinct advantage that they have over other factions. So they have a lot of their experience going to magical training as well. So the idea being that like over time, different factions would use their experience in different ways. So like if you look at every faction, let's say there's just like 7 factions in this hypothetical game, and over the course of, let's say, a year nets you 10,000 experience points for the faction to, you know, allocate however they wanted, based on criteria that you set for each faction. Those factions would spend their experience points in different ways, and if you wanted to, you could even add in like random elements or modifiers to how those, you know, how those experience points are utilized. Let's say, and like allow for the player to have an influence on that, right? So let's say that in the case of like the bandits, let's say that you actually had the ability to befriend bandit factions in Skyrim instead of just always attacking them on sight. There's some way that you could open up a dialogue with them. Maybe if you did like some sort of type of like a radiant quest for them that got them better quality weapons, maybe that would make them even more likely to invest their experience points into martial skills. Or even if you want to get even more like nitty gritty, let's say that you got them specifically a shipment of like really nice swords. You've now turned this band, so they have a bunch of these swords they really want to, you know, make the most out of. Maybe now they're specifically putting experience into sword usage because they have a lot of really awesome swords, and you've now created a bandit group that is specifically suited for swords or something like that. These are just like kind of interesting ways that the player could also have an impact on where the experience points are allocated, and also a way to make each playthrough kind of interesting and dynamic so that, you know, the Thalmor, let's say, aren't always expending their skills or their experience points in exactly the same way every playthrough. Even if the player doesn't even impact them or something. Or if you want to get real fucking systemic with it, you can make it so that, like, okay, what if there's a skill for like informational warfare, right? So something like the Thalmor, one of their greatest strengths as a faction, even in the game already, is that they have access to a very well-established informational network. What if like that skill allows the Thalmor to respond effectively to stuff that is happening within the other factions, right? So let's say you, in that example of you helping out the bandits with like really dope martial skills, or like working with them to enhance their skills in one way. If the Thalmor was like really focused on taking out the bandit faction, their ability to their skill experience in informational warfare allowed them to have a better chance of developing skills that would specifically respond to those bandits. There's just so many different ways that you could gear it. Like, fuck, man, if you even knew, like, let's say that the faction relations had a big influence on who the Thalmor chooses to respond to. Like, a good example here is the Stormcloaks, right? Like, let's say, for the sake of conversation, that the Stormcloaks, or sorry, the Thalmor are most vehemently opposed to the Stormcloaks. As the player, what if you then went and helped out the Stormcloaks in a very, very specific way that you wanted the Thalmor to respond to? So let's say that you helped the Stormcloaks build out a way of defending against magical spells. So you specifically went to the Stormcloaks and chose a quest that would help the Stormcloaks develop magical resistance equipment or something like that. That would be a big problem for the Thalmor because they use magical stuff, right? Normally, if you hadn't done that, the Thalmor would be placing a bunch of experience in, you know, their biggest advantage, which is magical abilities. But because you've now helped the Stormcloaks develop a defense to magical abilities, and because the Thalmor have a lot of experience in informational warfare, and they can detect that the Stormcloaks have now developed this defense, the Thalmor are forced to adapt their tactics, maybe start investing in some more martial stuff or whatever. And let's say that you do that, and you like pull all these strings, right? And then you specifically gear your character so that you can take advantage of the direction that the Thalmor have chosen to like spend their experience points. What if you are also particularly susceptible to magic, and you wanted to fight the Thalmor? You've now made it so that the Thalmor are focusing less on the type of obstacle that is like a real problem for you. You could really just like mess with stuff like super crazy. It's like, yeah, you know, I kind of manipulated the Thalmor into focusing on martial weapons because, you know, I'm really bad against martial weapons and I want to fuck up the Thalmor. So I got them to focus their attention on the Stormcloaks because the Stormcloaks are now, you know, or they already had their attention focused on the Stormcloaks. They noticed that the Stormcloaks now have magical equipment. It's almost like a more developed version of like in Metal Gear Solid 5. If you guys played that game, it had some really awesome kind of reactive gameplay in the same way, where it's like if you're just headshotting people left and right, eventually the game will respond by equipping all the soldiers with helmets, right? Because the game recognizes that you have a certain amount of people that you keep killing with headshots, and it's like, yo, like you imagine that these soldiers are meeting in a room somewhere and going, all right, well, we've had 100 soldiers get killed with headshots this week. We know that whoever we're facing off against has a real, you know, proclivity for headshots here. Let's develop some stuff to specifically respond to that threat. That's the kind of stuff that would happen, and it would allow you to do all this crazy shit. Yeah, I'm really sorry I went off on a crazy rant. I missed a lot of chat here. See, going off that, bandits would get weaker if they are, say, only running a highwayman toll and have no opposition. Sure, they're threatening people, but not so much fighting. Totally true for Fonte, because it's not like you get better at fighting by not fighting. So let's say that, like, that bandit faction, you just leave them to continue doing their toll. They'll start getting a lot more gold because people are paying for it, but if it ever comes to, like, defending themselves martially, they might be at a disadvantage. But maybe then they can use the gold to, like, purchase either additional help or, like, you know... They would have this, one of the big focuses of Ultimate Skyrim in particular is giving the player all different kinds of ways to accomplish the same thing, quote unquote. Like, you know, you can train all your martial skill and like use your resources one way, but if you want to like spend your gold on like a trainer instead and like use time, I don't know. The idea being that you can accomplish the same thing through a number of different ways. What if we allowed factions to do that same thing, and then we used different like, you know, values to determine how they wanted to do that? Let's say that that bandit faction in this example that gets all this gold, we use a series of numerical attribute values saying like maybe they're a bandit faction that is really smart but they're kind of cowardly, or just something like that, right? That would dictate how they chose to like use the resources that they've had. It's just like a crazy systemic thing that we're creating here. Like the player guilds in an MMO, there are some that don't do much but sit around and talk, social-based, versus the ones that constantly train, PvP-based. The PvP ones would absolutely destroy the social guilds. Absolutely true. What is it? Mad Villain says, this is sick as fuck. I'm glad you think so. By Stendar, so many great ideas. This is like, this is what you're saying, Sacroletus. This is the kind of stuff that we can come up with when we get to sit and talk about this kind of shit. Evil player character, bandit leader. Mac Morris says camps that have a random extra character added that give the camp higher tempered gear / more better poisons, potions, more better enchanted gear and scrolls added to camps. This is exactly the kind of shit that we're talking about here. Bigger camps get 2 of those characters, so you have like this ability where if you, let's say that you have this camp exactly as you described here that has these types of characters that give them a specific advantage, that specific advantage allows them to continue growing bigger. As they get bigger, they get more of these advantages. It creates a scenario where like neglecting this camp and just not really paying attention to what they're doing really screws you down the line. Because now, like, you've been focusing your attention over here on whatever other factions or whatever, and this camp has now, like, a bunch of people who lend them these really awesome specific improvements to their abilities, and because you let this camp kind of do their own thing for so long and didn't pay attention, they're now, like, a really huge threat. It's almost like introducing grand strategy elements into, like, a role-playing game. Man, I gotta admit, guys, this has my brain firing on some cylinders that I have not considered before or in a long time. Yeah, lucidity. It's like so many ideas. It's like, oh my god, my head is gonna explode. Assassins, scouts, spies. Snotnose, hey, how you doing? Rivaling bandit factions, Black Blood Marauders, Soulslime Reavers, Blood Horkers, Silver Hand, all this stuff, Sacroletus, and they all, like, God, imagine that the Silver Hand and the Black Blood Marauders, excuse me, have cool specific stuff, you know, like that make them, like fighting them is different from fighting the other ones. That's what Obis does in a sense, but they just spawn randomly together. Interesting. Lucidity says making enemies would probably make it so they would send groups after you, kind of like with the thieves and the hired thugs, sure. Or maybe you set a certain set of criteria that, like, once they reach that criteria, it gives them the option to, like, send, you know, like, hired thugs after you or something equivalent. And then once again, based on those attribute values, they would be more or less likely to use that tactic against you or against one of their other rival factions or something like that. And Sacaletti says, using enable parents, this could work, though. Smokey Bear 187. In other words, Skyrim made by CD Projekt Red. Sure, but even here, it's like CD Projekt Red, I can't think of a game that they've made that introduces factional systems to this degree. I don't know. It's like, I think that what we're kind of looking here, I think that this is the kind of stuff that you really only find in like grand strategy games. I've never really seen it in like a kind of an action-based RPG. This is honestly the kind of thing that if you were to try and implement it to Skyrim, So one of the reasons why I created Ultimate Skyrim was because I had a really vested interest in game design, but as you guys know, there's a huge difference between building a game from scratch and leveraging the collective talent of probably the most talented group of modders in like the gaming industry. I say that I don't mean to cast shade at any other modding scene for any other games, but I think it's factual that the Skyrim modding scene may be the largest ever, and all of us know how fantastic some of the mods are that are available for Skyrim. So Ultimate Skyrim was kind of my attempt at, I mean, it's the same thing anyone does when they create like a heavy modded game, right? Like their own version of Skyrim. It's my attempt at making like the sort of game that I would want to play in this setting that I really enjoy as well, but also just without having to reinvent the wheel at every possible stage, right? Which is kind of what you have to do when you're building a game from the ground up. Now, for stuff like what we're talking about here, I don't know if the kind of pre-established stuff that exists in Skyrim now would be an advantage or a disadvantage, because it's an advantage in that you don't have to completely build every single mechanic from scratch, right? Or even just the entire experience. But it's a disadvantage in that Skyrim has its limitations, and sometimes working against those limitations to create this type of experience that you want ends up being so much effort that you might as well have just built a system to accommodate specifically what you want from the beginning, from scratch. So it's an interesting type of question. For something like this, I think that just how I envision the extensiveness of it, right? Like being able to go to like factional leaders and influence how the factions themselves behave and what they choose to do and all this stuff. I don't know. It almost makes me think of like, it's like, would it just be better to just build a game from the ground up doing something like this? Or would it be possible in the context of Skyrim? Because Skyrim also does already have built-in systems for stuff like those kind of attribute values that we were talking about, like the different values that each faction would have, things like aggression and confidence. Really, those are just single numerical values, so it's not like it would be that hard to program in something like that. I don't know. It would. I think what we're talking about here is a pretty fundamental change in how the game would play. That's for certain. Stormcloaks are beefy Nords that would destroy the Thalmors, trying to perpetrate as melee fighters. Also, good point, Snotnose. So maybe it would be more likely for if the Thalmor, like, it depends on how specific you got with it. So maybe their response to the magical resistance of the Stormcloaks would not be to like enhance their martial skills. Maybe they could also like allocate their experience points into like subterfuge and like assassination, you know, something that wouldn't exactly require them to go toe to toe, just pure beefy fighting with the Stormcloaks. And they already kind of have a proclivity for assassination. It's more just like an example. Lucidity says that's a great idea, like assigning personalities to the bandits. Like with the Highwaymen, perhaps they have the Silver Tongue personality, but the Cowardly Vice. Absolutely. This is the type of fucking systemic roguelike stuff that we're talking about. For Fonte, Shadow of War Nemesis system, only more fleshed out. Totally agreed. Sacriletius, limitations are there for being worked around. Also totally agreed. Man. Fun stuff to think about. I'm going to have to call the stream right here. But, it does make you think. I'll tell you guys right now. So I have a master to-do list for Ultimate Skyrim development for 4.0, but also just beyond 4.0. And let me tell you, when I say I have so many more plans for things I know can already be done to enhance the game and make it just even more amazing. Like really, really a lot of stuff. I don't want to oversell it because, you know, it's still, the constraints are my own abilities and the time that I have to dedicate. But as of now, like I'm doing this full time, and I assume that with the whole express install and then the basic install and the contrast, I will at some point really be able to dedicate even more time to this. Really, the sky's the limit, and I wonder if someday it would be possible to implement something like what we're talking about here, because I'm thinking about it and it's kind of hard to conceive, right, when you're looking at it as like this grand scale. But if we just do it a little bit at a time, most of these concepts that we're talking about are not like super complex. You know, the idea of like the personalities where, you know, different factions have different attributes that you could assign or just dictate numerically. Like that's basic programming, that kind of thing. I don't know, maybe. At the very least, I'm really glad that we had a chance to talk about all this stuff, because it's really got my brain juices flowing far more than I thought would be the case, just for a Q&A stream on Monday. Lucidity, nice talking to all of you. So many good ideas. I'm going to grab some cash when I get a job to get that beta. I'm so hyped right now. I appreciate it, Lucidity. Like my goal for the immediate future as well is to really build out the value that people get. It's like right now people are paying $5 a month for the betas, and a lot of people seem to be satisfied with that, which I hope is evident by the fact that they're paying for it. But my goal going forward with like the Express install and some other plans that I have is to really, like, I appreciate so much anyone who chooses to like donate in order to allow people to do the work that they're trying to do. But I think the best option for both you guys and for like me and for creators in general is to create like a symbiotic relationship where you are really getting something awesome for the monetary contribution that you make, whether it's a severe reduction in installation time or, you know, beta builds coming out at a consistent rate, just anything that actually like something like just dope stuff that you guys actually want and that actually feels appropriate for what you spend, that also allows creators to create even more because they don't have to worry. I think one of the biggest problems with any sort of hobby money making or trying to convert something like a hobby to like a full-time position is financial security. It's the kind of thing that it's why you need to have side businesses or why you need to have a full-time job and then do something like that on the side. You really just can't afford to spend like this amount of time on something that's only getting you this much financial security, you know, like time is money and all that. I don't know. Let's summarize it by saying, I got some really, really awesome plans for the future that I think, are going to be really awesome for both me and for all of you guys. And thank you very much for having this conversation with me today, because it was a lot of fun and it just really makes me think about what's possible with like the future of the installation. I think about that a lot. These are a lot of cool new ideas, things I'd not really stopped to consider before. So thank you all for joining me. It really, really was wonderful. I hope that you enjoyed it yourselves. And I will see you next week at the same time. I'll be doing these streams every week. And I will see you guys then. And if you have any other questions or comments, or hey, if you, from all the ideas that we've been talking about today, if you have any other ones that you want to share with me or talk about at some other point in the future, you can always reach me on YouTube. You can reach me on Reddit. I'd say the Discord maybe is one of the best ways to like get me quickly, because I'm on the Discord all the time, even though it says I'm offline. That's how I keep, it's like a secret that I'm online. Feel free to reach out to me on whatever platform you prefer. I try to reply to stuff ASAP. And thank you guys very much for joining me today. You take care too, Fishwish, Sacroletius, Lucidity, Snotnose, Ferfante, everyone who joined us, Smoky Bear. I'm reading those names because they're the ones that I can see on the chat, but everyone else who joined me today, I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one.